A battered old journal slips from a rookie's jacket, and inside isn't just scribbles, but a map of corruption. Cops in bed with gangs, protection money paid in the blood of the poor. The moment he opens it, he's no longer just a rookie. He's the hunted, but it's the very people society spit on, the homeless, a scarred veteran, a child judged by skin, and one aging loyal dog who stand beside him when no one else will. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. Hit subscribe and turn the page with us, because every word in that diary speaks for those who were forced to stay silent. The city at night was a stage split in two. High above, glass towers shimmered like man-made stars, their balconies glowing with golden light. Men in pressed suits raised crystal glasses, wine swirling crimson under chandeliers. Their laughter traveled down into the streets, bouncing off walls as if the whole city existed only to echo their wealth. But under the bridges, near the murky river, another reality breathed raw, damp, and stripped of glamour. Thin blankets covered thinner bodies. Every breath carried the stench of mildew. Every heartbeat whispered the same fear. Will there still be a place to rest tomorrow? A boy sat at the curb, no more than 12, dark skin, eyes too deep for his age. Hugging a frayed backpack, he pulled out a scrap of paper and a dull pencil, sketching quietly. His trembling lines captured the city before him, towers lit like heaven, shadows crawling below. Every time he lifted his head, he met glances that stabbed like pins quick, dismissive, laced with whispers. Street kid. Probably a thief. Someone muttered as they walked past. He didn't answer. His lips pressed into a thin line. Silence was the only shield he had left. A few yards away, a man in his 50s leaned against a lamppost. His beard was scruffy, his jacket once military, green now washed to gray. Next to him lay a German shepherd, old and tired, one ear drooping, eyes still sharp though clouded by years. A cardboard sign sat in front. I fought for this country. Now I just need a meal. Most people quickened their pace as they passed. Some turned their faces away. A woman in pearls clutched her purse tight, as if his stare alone could rob her. Across the street, 3 uniformed officers spilled out of a cafe, boots polished, shirts stiff with starch, laughter dripping with arrogance. The youngest sharp-jawed, eyes cold glanced at the veteran and the boy. His words rang out, half joke, half poison. This city's trash. Don't know why it hasn't been cleaned up yet. Their laughter cracked through the night. Bitter. Coffee splashed onto the pavement, seeping into the cracks where old rainwater still lingered. The veteran lowered his head. His hands, knotted with veins, tightened on the dog's leash. He said nothing. The shepherd lifted its head, eyes flashing, then settled back down as if it knew its master no longer had the strength to fight. And then it happened. From the veteran's worn coat pocket slipped a leather notebook, landing on the sidewalk with a soft thud. Its brittle pages fanned open in the breeze. Words filled the paper, hurried, uneven, yet resolute. A name surfaced. A name any cop would recognize. Daniel saw it first. The rookie had only been in uniform a few weeks. His shirt still held its factory creases. Everything about the city still felt new to him until now. He bent down, picked up the notebook. The veteran's eyes locked onto his. Not begging, not pleading, something harder. A silent demand, heavy with desperation. Daniel hesitated. He flipped to the first page. It all began with dirty money between the police and the gangs. His chest tightened. He looked at the veteran, then around him. The city lights suddenly felt too bright, as if every lamp had turned to spotlight him. The laughing officers across the street didn't seem so distracted anymore. Daniel's pulse quickened. He didn't know why, but in that instant he made a choice. He slid the notebook into his jacket, and with that, an invisible door closed behind him. Daniel's fingers lingered on the cracked leather, the weight of the notebook pressing heavier than it should have. He didn't dare open it again, not here, not under the neon glow where anyone could see. Rookie looked back at the veteran. The man's eyes had dulled again, sinking into shadow. But there was something unspoken between them now, something Daniel didn't yet understand. A bus roared past, drowning the silence for a moment. The boy on the curb shielded his sketch from the gust of exhaust, pressing his pencil harder, darker. Daniel's gaze fell to the drawing. Towers sharp and glittering above, stick figures hunched below. The boy had shaded a line through the middle, as if the city itself were split in two worlds that would never touch. Nice work, Daniel murmured before he realized he'd spoken. The boy looked up, wary. Compliments were rare currency out here. His shoulders tightened, ready for the mockery that usually followed. But Daniel only nodded once, offering a small, genuine smile. For the first time that night, the boy's grip on his pencil loosened. Across the street, the officer's laughter thinned. One of them stubbed out his cigarette, eyes narrowing at Daniel. The rookie knew the look, well, senior cops measuring him, wondering if he'd break rank. He straightened his posture, pretending he hadn't noticed, but a cold bead of sweat traced down his spine. The veteran shifted, pulling his coat tighter, as if bracing against more than the night air. His dog pressed against his leg, nose twitching toward the group of officers. The leash trembled in his hand. Daniel caught himself staring too long. He forced himself to step back, away from the curb. His radio crackled at his shoulder, static, hissing like an impatient whisper. Somewhere in the city, a dispatcher called out a disturbance, but his feet felt rooted. The veteran finally spoke, voice low and gravelly, words meant only for him. Careful what you're holding, kid. Paper cuts deeper than knives in this city. Before Daniel could respond, the old man leaned back against the lamppost, as if he'd already said too much. The rookie walked away, but the notebook in his jacket felt alive, pulsing with secrets. Each step echoed against the concrete, a rhythm that no longer belonged to him. Behind him, the boy erased part of his sketch, smudging the towers until their bright outlines blurred into shadow. The veteran closed his eyes, head tilted back, while the dog kept its gaze fixed on Daniel's retreating figure, as if it knew the path ahead was about to turn dangerous. The city, oblivious, kept breathing its two-faced rhythm, laughter from above, silence from below. But something had shifted, and though Daniel didn't yet know it, the night had already chosen him. Daniel made it 2 blocks before he ducked into an alley, away from the streetlights. His breath came shallow, the notebook burning against his chest like contraband. He pressed his back to the wall, listening. Cars hummed by on the avenue. Somewhere a bottle shattered, followed by laughter too loud to be harmless. The city was always talking, always watching. He pulled the notebook out and let the leather fall open. The handwriting was jagged, uneven, but there was no mistaking the intent. Lines of names, dates, numbers. Not random scribbles ledgers. Payouts, drop points. And worse, badge numbers. Daniel's throat tightened. He snapped it shut and shoved it back inside his jacket. He wasn't supposed to see this. He wasn't supposed to know. He was just a rookie, still learning where the bathrooms were at precinct headquarters, still getting used to the weight of the badge. And yet, here was proof that the shadows everyone whispered about weren't just shadows. They had names. Faces, kid, the voice jolted him. Daniel's hand went instinctively to his holster before realizing it was one of the officers from the cafe, swaggering down the alley. The man's smirk glistened under the street lamp. You're jumpy. First month jitters? Daniel forced a smile. Just clearing my head. The officer stepped closer, too close. His cologne masked the sour tang of cigarettes. Word of advice. Don't hang around the trash on the sidewalks. You feed strays, they follow you home. You get me? Daniel nodded stiffly. The man clapped a heavy hand on his shoulder before turning back toward the street. The message was clear. When the officer disappeared, Daniel let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He touched the notebook again. They know, he thought. Or maybe they did not yet. But the weight in his chest told him it was only a matter of time. He walked home with his head low, the city stretching out around him in harsh neon and hollow. Laughter. From a rooftop above, the boy had climbed up with his sketchbook, knees tucked under his chin. He watched Daniel shrink into the distance, pencil scratching across paper. He wasn't drawing towers this time. He was drawing the rookie alone, shoulders bent, a shadow too small against a city too large. And down by the lamppost, the veteran stroked the graying fur of his shepherd. His voice was a whisper the dog alone could hear, told him not to touch it, but maybe he's the kind of fool this place needs. The dog's ears flicked as if it agreed. The night pressed on, heavy and endless. Somewhere above, champagne glasses clinked. Somewhere below, stomachs growled. But in one jacket pocket, a battered notebook beat like a second heart, one that could tear the city in half if opened in. The wrong light. Daniel's apartment was 3 flights up in a crumbling brick building that smelled of fried oil and mildew. The radiator hissed like a restless snake, heating the air unevenly. He locked the door behind him, leaned against it, and pulled the notebook out once more. He laid it on the table, just staring. The leather was cracked, corners softened by years of use. A veteran's notebook, he reminded himself. A man who had seen war, who had already carried secrets most people couldn't imagine. Daniel poured himself a glass of water, his hand trembling. He sat, flipped a page. The handwriting was sharper here, words pressed deep into the paper as if the pen had been a knife. They meet on the docks. Thursdays, cash from the gangs, protection money. They wear the same uniforms I once trusted. And I kept the ledger. Because someday someone will need to know. Daniel shut his eyes. His mother's face came to him, tired, soft, carrying bags of groceries the night she was robbed. No one had helped. The cops had shown up late, shrugging like it was another chore. She'd lived, but something in her broke that night. That was why Daniel had chosen the badge. To be the kind of officer who didn't shrug. And now this. Proof that the badge itself had been pawned off, traded for envelopes of dirty bills. He slammed the notebook closed, pushing back from the table. The chair screeched against the floor, his pulse hammered. He wasn't ready for this. He was just a rookie. But the truth was here, and it didn't care about rank. Daniel paced the room, running a hand through his hair, through the thin walls. A baby cried in the next apartment, then the sound of someone cursing, a door slamming. The city's unrest seeped into every corner. He turned back to the notebook. For a moment he thought about tossing it in the trash, washing his hands clean. Pretend he'd never picked it up. Pretend he hadn't seen the names. But deep down he knew, once you read the first page, you were already complicit. The radiator hissed louder, masking the faint creak of footsteps outside his door. He froze. Silence followed. Then a shadow passed under the crack of the doorway. Daniel's hand hovered near his holster, heart thundering. Whoever it was didn't knock. The shadow lingered, then faded down the hall. He didn't sleep that night. He sat by the table, notebook in front of him, service weapon beside him. His reflection stared back from the window, pale against the city lights beyond. Down on the street, sirens wailed and faded. The city exhaled in restless gasps. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked hoarse. Determined. Daniel looked at the notebook one last time before sunrise. The words on its cover had nearly rubbed off, but he traced them with his thumb as if they were etched in stone. He whispered to himself, voice barely audible over the radiator, paper cuts deeper than knives. And outside, the city kept waiting. The morning light never reached the underpasses. By the time the sun climbed over the glass towers, the streets beneath were still drowned in shadow. Vendors opened their carts, shouting prices for coffee and stale pastries. Businessmen in suits brushed past, clutching briefcases like shields. Nobody looked at the people waking up on the sidewalks, wrapped in blankets that smelled of damp. cardboard, and gasoline. The veteran stirred from his spot by the lamppost. His joints protested as he stood, leaning heavily on his shepherd. The dog's once sharp ears twitched at every passing car, but age had dulled its reactions. Together they moved slowly, as if carrying not only their own weight, but the city's. Indifference strapped to their backs, a woman crossed the street, her son tugging at her sleeve. "Mom, the dog looks hungry." "Don't stare," she snapped, pulling him faster. The veteran said nothing. He'd learned long ago that silence was armor. Words only made people flinch harder. Still, his hand stroked the shepherd's head, as though to assure the dog, "We're invisible, but we're still here." A few blocks away, the boy from the night before crouched by a schoolyard fence. He watched other children stream inside, backpacks bouncing, voices bright. His fingers clutched the wire. He had once been part of that crowd, until the foster home decided he was too much trouble. Until the school decided he was a distraction. Until the streets claimed him. He pulled out his sketchbook, pages smudged with charcoal. Today he drew children running toward doors that would never open for him again. The guard spotted him and barked, "Move along, kid." The boy slipped away, sliding the notebook back into his bag. His drawings were the only proof he existed, the only world where he belonged. Across town, in a narrow apartment above a laundromat, a single mother folded uniforms she'd washed for strangers. Her daughter slept on the couch, homework papers spread across her chest. Rent was due in 3 days, and the numbers on the calendar didn't add up no matter how many times she tried. She thought of applying for aid again, but the last time, the caseworker's eyes had said it all. "You're one of those people. Always asking. Always failing." The city had a way of branding people. Poor, homeless, broken. Once branded, you were never anything else. Daniel saw it now. He patrolled the streets with his unit, but his eyes kept straying toward the veteran with the dog, toward the boy with the sketchbook, toward the single mother rushing with grocery bags twice her size. His partner saw none of it. Or maybe they chose not to. At roll call, one officer joked about sweeping the sidewalks clean. Laughter rippled through the room. Daniel forced a chuckle, but his stomach knotted. The notebook in his apartment weighed on him like a hidden chain. Every name in it, every number, connected somehow to the lives he passed on patrol. That afternoon, rain came sudden and hard. The city turned slick, umbrellas colliding like shields. In the park, officers shouted orders as they forced people out from under the bandstand where they'd taken shelter. "City property. Move it." The veteran stumbled as one officer shoved him. His dog barked, teeth bared, but the leash jerked tight. The boy tried to help, tugging at the man's sleeve, but a cop snarled, "Get lost, kid," and shoved him aside too. Daniel stood frozen. His training screamed, "Stay in line." His conscience screamed louder. The image of his mother, groceries spilled on the pavement, flashed through his head. The sound of her voice, "Don't let them walk over people like they walked over me." He stepped forward, ready to speak, but the veteran's eyes caught his. A small shake of the head. "Not now. Not here." The rookie swallowed his words. Rain soaked his collar, his radio buzzed, and the notebook, waiting at home, seemed to whisper from miles away, "This is only the beginning." The rain didn't stop for hours. It pooled along curbs, swallowed cigarette butts, blurred the chalk drawings children had left on the sidewalk the day before. By evening, the city looked washed raw, as though someone had tried to scrub away the dirt, but only managed to smear it deeper. The veteran and his shepherd huddled under the awning of a shuttered pawn shop. The old man's coat clung heavy to his frame, water dripping from his beard. The dog leaned into him, ribs pressing against fabric. Once, in another life, the animal had been praised, armored in a vest, sent charging into danger. Now it was just another stray in a city that had no room for strays. He tore the last piece of bread in half, setting one half on the ground. The shepherd sniffed, hesitated, then ate. The man chewed his portion slowly, each bite tasting more like shame than food. A young couple walked past, holding hands beneath a bright umbrella. The woman glanced at them and whispered to her partner, "Poor thing. At least the dog's loyal." The words stung. Not about him, the veteran had grown numb to pity, but about the dog. As if his companion deserved care more than he did. He rubbed the shepherd's ears, whispering, "Don't listen. They don't know we saved each other." The boy had found refuge in an abandoned warehouse. He spread his damp sketches along the floor, weighing them down with bricks. Towers, faces, alleys. One drawing stood out an officer's badge, shaded black until the numbers disappeared. He tore it out, folded it, and shoved it into his bag. Some images weren't meant to be seen. Not yet. His stomach growled. He pressed a hand against it, forcing himself to ignore the ache. He'd learned hunger could be silenced by drawing, at least for a while. Still, he thought of the veteran and the dog, and the way the rookie cop had looked at him with something almost like respect. Maybe tomorrow he'd try to find them again. Daniel couldn't shake the scene from the park. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the shove, the bark, the boy slipping in the mud. His fellow officers had joked afterward, lighting cigarettes, talking about keeping order. To them it was routine, just another day. But not to Daniel. Back in his apartment, he opened the notebook again. This time he forced himself to read further. They promised me silence if I kept my distance. But silence is another form of death. I watched men in uniform escort dealers through the alleys, watched cash change hands. I wrote it down because memory is fragile, and I am tired of being afraid. Daniel's chest tightened. The entries grew darker, more detailed. The veteran had named names, recorded addresses, sketched maps of docks and warehouses. It wasn't just gossip. It was evidence. And Daniel realized the man hadn't dropped the notebook by accident. He'd placed it. In front of him, a test. The radiator hissed in the corner. He looked toward his door, half expecting another shadow to pass beneath it. He whispered to himself, "Why me?" But the city had no answer. That night, the veteran dreamed of sand and gunfire. The dog whimpered beside him, paws twitching as if running in its sleep. The boy curled in the warehouse, hugging his backpack, sketches scattered like feathers. The single mother counted coins beneath the buzz of a failing light bulb. And Daniel sat awake, notebook open on his lap, staring at words that could burn down everything he thought he believed in. The storm had passed, but the air outside was heavy, thick with a silence that felt like warning. Something was coming. The rain left behind a city that smelled of rust and gasoline. The sidewalk steamed as the late sun broke through, gold light glancing off puddles like tiny mirrors. For most, it was just another evening. For the ones living on the margins, it was survival hour by hour. The boy tried to buy a sandwich with the coins he'd collected. The clerk wrinkled his nose, counted the change twice and said, "Still short. Move along." When the boy didn't, a hand shoved his shoulder. I said move. He stumbled backward, cheeks burning. Customers watched but said nothing. One woman even clucked her tongue, muttering, "That's what happens when you let them hang around." The boy gathered his coins, one rolling into a puddle. He crouched, reaching when a shadow fell over him. The shepherd. Muzzle gray, eyes sharp, standing between the boy and the clerk's glare. The veteran was slow to follow, but his hand rested steady on the leash. "He's with me," the old soldier rasped. The clerk scoffed. "Keep your pets outside, both of them." The veteran's face stayed calm, but inside, rage coiled. He dropped the last of his bread money on the counter. One sandwich to go. The boy clutched the warm paper bag minutes later, speechless. The veteran only nodded once. The dog nudged the boy's hand, almost gently, as if reminding him. Was seen. Daniel witnessed the end of it from across the street. He hadn't meant to. His patrol had taken him this way by chance. But the sight veteran boy, dog huddled together under the neon glow hit harder than any lecture in the academy. His partner muttered, "City's crawling with leeches tonight." Daniel's jaw tightened. "They're people," he said before he could stop himself. His partner shot him a look sharp enough to cut. "Careful, rookie. You talk like that, someone might think you've forgotten which side you're on." Daniel fell silent, but his eyes stayed fixed on the trio across the street, lit in flickers of red from a passing bus. For a heartbeat, it looked less like three forgotten souls and more like a family fragile, mismatched, but bound by something stronger than survival. Later that night, Daniel unlocked his apartment door and froze. The air inside was wrong. Too still. He stepped in, hand hovering near his holster. The window was shut, but the curtain swayed faintly, as if touched. On the table lay the notebook, exactly where he had left it, only the page was different. Open. His chest tightened. Someone had been here. He approached slowly. The words on the exposed page were written in the same jagged hand, but these he hadn't read before. "They will come for this. For me, for anyone who carries it. Trust no one. Not even the ones wearing the same badge." Daniel snapped the book shut. His pulse hammered in his ears. He backed toward the door, listening for creaks, breaths, anything, nothing. Whoever had been here was gone. Still, the warning felt alive, buzzing in his skull. He looked out the window. Down on the street, the veteran and his dog trudged toward the underpass. The boy followed a few paces behind, clutching his sandwich like treasure. The world above them blazed with neon, but down there the light didn't reach. Daniel whispered to himself, "I'm already in this." And the city, as if answering, groaned with sirens in the distance, long, mournful, and inevitable. The city didn't ease into chaos, it stumbled into it, like a drunk tripping downstairs. It started with the eviction. The mayor's office called it a scheduled clearing of unauthorized encampments. The news stations dressed it up with polished anchors and bright graphics. But on the ground, it was simpler. Men with badges and batons pushing the poor out of a park that had been theirs long before glass towers rose around it. Daniel's unit was assigned to the operation. He stood shoulder to shoulder with men he didn't trust, helmet heavy, shield in hand. Across the park's muddy grass, tents flapped weakly in the wind. People scrambled, grabbing what they could. Some clutched children, some clutched dogs. Some clutched nothing but blankets. "Move it along." An officer barked. The veteran stood his ground. His shepherd bristled at his side, teeth bared though age had dulled its strength. The old soldier's voice carried through the commotion. "I bled for this country. This patch of grass is all I've got left. You want it, you'll have to take it from me." Shouts rose. Officers surged forward. The boy darted out of nowhere, trying to tug at the veteran's sleeve. A baton swung and missed his head by inches. Daniel's baton swung and missed his head by inches. Stomach knotted. He heard his sergeant yell, "Advance!" But his legs froze. He saw fear in the boy's eyes, defiance in the veteran's, hunger in the faces behind them. And he saw his fellow officers, grinning, enjoying the push, the power. The line broke. Screens cut through the air. A tent collapsed. Someone hurled a bottle that shattered against a riot shield. The crowd surged one way, the police another. Daniel's shield slipped from his grasp. His hand went instead to the boy, yanking him back just as a boot came down where he'd been. The boy stumbled into him, clutching his sketchbook like armor. "Run," Daniel whispered. The boy hesitated, then bolted. The veteran locked eyes with Daniel across the chaos. No words, just a flicker of recognition, like two soldiers spotting each other across enemy lines. By nightfall, the park was cleared. Mud and broken belongings were all that remained. News vans circled, cameras framing the scene as another victory for public order. Daniel sat in the locker room, helmet at His feet, uniform spattered with dirt that wasn't his. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. His partner slapped his back. "Not bad, rookie. You'll toughen up, or you'll wash out." Daniel didn't answer. In his mind, he replayed the veteran's voice, the boy's eyes, the sound of that baton slicing the air. He knew which side of the line he wanted to be on, and it wasn't the one he'd been standing with Dot at home. The notebook waited. He opened it again, needing something, anything, to make sense of what he'd seen. The first time I wrote a name, my hand shook. The second time, I stopped shaking. Now I write them, because it's the only way I still feel alive. The gangs pay the cops protect the gangs, and the rest of us drown in the mud. If this book survives me, maybe someone will finally understand we weren't crazy. We were betrayed. Daniel closed his eyes. Betrayal, that was the word. It fit like a blade sliding into its sheath. Dot in a warehouse across town. The boy flipped through his own sketchbook. He'd drawn the park. Police shields, tents collapsing, a dog snarling, a rookie pulling him to safety. He didn't know the rookie's name, but he knew the look in his eyes, someone caught between two worlds. The veteran sat nearby, bandaging the shepherd's paw. His voice was gravel. "The city's a machine. It chews up the poor first, but it doesn't stop there. Even the ones feeding it one day, it'll chew them too." The boy didn't answer. He kept drawing, his pencil scratching like a fuse burning short. The city exhaled smoke and neon, restless, hungry. And somewhere in its veins, the first sparks of resistance began to glow. The news called it a successful operation. Smiling anchors praised the department for restoring safety and cleanliness to the park. Camera crews had framed the shot carefully. Officers standing tall in neat rows. Tents already hauled off in trucks. They didn't show the mud, the bruises, or the sketchbook that had fallen into the muck before a trembling hand scooped it back up. Dot at the precinct. Officers celebrated like they'd won a championship game. Donuts appeared in boxes. Jokes flew louder than usual. "One less dump in the city," someone laughed. "About time." Daniel sat apart, helmet on the floor by his boots, the sound of laughter echoing in his skull. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the boy's face wide, terrified, but still stubborn, and the veteran standing against the line with nothing but age and memory as armor. "Rookie." His sergeant dropped into the chair across from him. A man with a belly pressed against his belt, smile too sharp to be friendly. "Heard you hesitated yesterday." Daniel kept his eyes forward. "I followed orders." The sergeant chuckled. "Orders maybe, spirit, no. Don't forget, we watch each other out there. You hesitate again, it's not just your ass on the line." The unspoken threat landed heavier than his words. Fall in line or be left behind. Meanwhile, the veteran sat beneath the bridge, his shepherd stretched across his lap. The dog's paw was wrapped in a strip of torn shirt, its breathing heavy. The old man stroked its fur absently, eyes distant. A group of teenagers passed, laughing. Too loud, their sneakers bright white against the mud. One pointed at him, snickering. "Look, soldier turned bum. Bet the dog's worth more than he is." The veteran's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Silence was armor. Yet even armor rusts. He felt the words sinking deeper than he wanted to admit. The dog stirred, pressing closer, as if sensing the wound no bandage could cover. The boy found him later, dropping beside him with his sketchbook. He flipped to a fresh page, pencil scratching furiously. Minutes later, he turned the drawing toward the veteran, a soldier in uniform, standing tall beside a shepherd, crowds cheering behind them. The old man studied it, throat tightening. "That's not me anymore, kid." The boy shook his head. "It could be." For a moment, the veteran almost believed him. Daniel returned home that night to find his door ajar. His hand flew to his holster as he pushed inside. The apartment looked untouched except for the table. The notebook lay open. Again. This time, a new line had been scrawled across the margin. Different ink, different hand. They know you have it. Daniel's stomach dropped. His neighbor's televisions hummed through the walls. Someone upstairs argued about bills. A baby cried down the hall. Normal sounds, ordinary life. And yet, the message on the page turned his apartment into a cage. Checked the locks twice, 3 times. Sat with the notebook in his lap, gun on the table. His pulse wouldn't slow. He thought of the veteran's warning. Paper cuts deeper than knives in this city. He thought of his sergeant's smile, sharp as a blade. He thought of the boy's wide eyes, the dog's growl, and he realized the truth was already marked. Daniel hadn't meant to find them again. The city had a way of swallowing people whole. One day they were at the park or under a bridge. The next day they were gone, swept up by the tide. But 2 nights after the eviction, his patrol car rolled past an alley, and there they were, the veteran, the boy, and the shepherd, huddled together around a dented thermos. The boy spotted him first. He stiffened, clutching his sketchbook as if ready to bolt. The veteran followed his gaze, eyes narrowing. The shepherd rose halfway to its feet, old joints straining, a warning rumble in its throat. Daniel killed the engine. For a long moment, he just sat there, the uniform heavy on his back, the badge burning on his chest. He knew how he looked too. Them another cop, another threat. Finally he stepped out, hands visible, no weapon drawn. Rain slicked the pavement underfoot. "I'm not here to move you," he said quietly. The veteran's stare didn't soften. "Then why are you here?" Daniel hesitated. He couldn't say because your notebook won't let me sleep. Couldn't say because I'm drowning in a sea I thought I wanted to serve. So he said the only thing that felt true. "I want to understand." The boy snorted, bitter. "Cops don't understand. They just push." Daniel crouched, eye level. "With him, you're right. Most don't. I don't want to be like most." The boy studied him, mistrust etched deep. Still, he didn't run. The veteran finally spoke, voice like gravel scraped against stone. "Understanding comes with a price. You sure you're willing to pay it?" Daniel met his gaze. "I think I already am." For the first time, silence settled not like a wall but like a fragile truce. The dog sniffed the air, then padded forward, brushing its head against Daniel's knee. The boy's eyes widened. If the shepherd trusted him, maybe, just maybe, he wasn't lying. Daniel sat with them that night, sharing the lukewarm coffee in the thermos. He learned the boy's name Malik, learned the dog's name Ranger. The veteran never gave his, just said, "Call me what you want. Doesn't matter anymore." Malik told fragments of his story. Foster homes that spat him back out. Teachers who looked through him. Cops who shoved first and asked later. Every word was jagged. Each sentence carried more weight than a 12-year-old should ever bear. The veteran interrupted only once, when Malik mentioned stealing food. "You're no thief," he said firmly. "You're surviving. Don't let them convince you survival's a crime." Malik ducked his head, hiding behind his sketchbook. Daniel watched, throat tight. He remembered being 12, hiding from his mother's tears after the robbery, telling himself one day he'd make things right. The shepherd nudged Daniel's hand. Without thinking, he scratched behind its ear. Its tail thumped weakly. For a moment, the 3 of them sat in something almost like peace. The night pressed colder as hours stretched. The alley where they sat smelled of rain-soaked brick and rusted metal, but somehow it felt safer than the barracks Daniel called home. Malik scribbled in his sketchbook by the dim light of a broken street lamp. But pencil lines were quick, sure. Like his hand had learned long ago to keep up with a restless mind. He tore out a page and shoved it toward Daniel. It was a sketch of him, helmet under one arm, eyes shadowed. But unlike the polished recruitment posters, Malik had drawn him crooked, haunted, a man already carrying ghosts. Daniel stared at it, throat dry. You drew this in 5 minutes. Didn't need more, Malik muttered, pulling the sketchbook back. His voice was sharp, but his eyes flickered with something softer pride. Maybe. The veteran watched, silent, sipping the last of the coffee. Finally he said, "Kid's got more truth in his pencil than most men have in their tongues." Daniel nodded, still staring at the drawing. "Looks like you see through me." Malik shrugged. "Easier to draw the cracks. People don't hide those as well as they think." The words cut deep. Because Daniel knew he was cracked. And the boy had seen it instantly. Later, when the coffee was gone and the wind picked up, Daniel found himself talking. Not because he planned to, but because the silence between them seemed to demand it. "My mom worked nights at a diner," he said quietly. "One night she got robbed walking home. 3 guys. No one helped. Cops showed up late, wrote a report. Left. She survived, but..." He swallowed hard. "She was never the same," I thought. "If I wore the badge, maybe I could stop it from happening to someone else." The veteran snorted, but not unkindly. "Noble, but the badge doesn't change." "The man, sometimes it changes him for the worse." Daniel met his eyes. "Then maybe it's on me to change what the badge means." For the first time, the veteran's stare softened. Just a fraction, but enough when the hunger became too loud to ignore. Daniel excused himself and returned with 3 sandwiches from a corner store. He handed one to Malik first. The boy eyed it suspiciously. "What's the catch?" "No catch." Malik unwrapped it slowly, sniffing as if it might vanish. Then he bit in, and his shoulders relaxed for the first time since Daniel had met him. The veteran accepted his portion after a long pause. "Cops don't usually feed us," he said. Daniel forced a smile. "Maybe they should start." The old man ate in silence, then finally muttered, "Thank you." It was only 2 words, but they felt heavier than any commendation Daniel had ever heard. Ranger, the shepherd, thumped his tail against the pavement, licking crumbs from Malik's fingers. The boy laughed an actual laugh, quick and surprised, like it had been locked away too long. The sound startled Daniel. He realized he'd never heard it before. It cracked the night open, letting something warmer spill through. For a brief moment, the 3 of them weren't cop, soldier, street kid. They were just people, sharing food, stories, and the company of a dog who had once chased criminals and now chased scraps. And in that fragile moment, the walls between them shifted. Not gone but thinner, easier to see through. The rain had dried by morning, leaving the city washed raw and tired. Traffic began to thrum again, sirens weaving between honking horns, the rhythm of a place that never truly slept. But in the forgotten alley, the world felt slower, as though time itself had paused to let 3 unlikely companions catch their breath. The veteran leaned back against the brick wall, eyes half closed. Malik sat cross-legged with his sketchbook propped on his knees, pencil moving quickly, the scratch steady as a heartbeat. Daniel watched them both, still in uniform, the badge on his chest feeling heavier than his vest. Finally the old soldier spoke. "You want to know what war does to a man?" His voice was low, gravel ground into dust. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "It takes everything you thought you were fighting for and feeds it through fire. You come back with ashes. They tell you you're a hero, then they cross the street when they see you in rags. They clap at parades, then cut funding for the clinic when you can't sleep through the night without pills. And when you can't find work, they call you lazy. That's what war does. It eats you twice, once on the battlefield and once when you come home." His words hung in the air, heavy as smoke. Malik had stopped drawing, his wide eyes fixed on the veteran as if hearing prophecy. Daniel swallowed hard. "And yet you kept writing."